Municipal Tree Commission meeting. Second item is a roll call. Scott McCoy is here, Debbie Rainey here, Christy Slaughter here, Mike Berkeley here, Jane Woodall, I believe, is she coming? She's on her way. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Second. All in favor? Aye. Agenda approved. Fourth item is the approval of the minutes from the monthly tree commission meeting on Tuesday, September 5th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of approving? Aye. Minutes are approved. Item number 5, old business. 5.1, the roadscapes project, Highway 100, Highway 96 junction in Fairview and associated dedication, general update discussion. This is an item that I left as an ongoing item, so I don't know if you've got anything, Debbie, on that? No? Anybody on that item?
Spoke with, or we emailed back and forth with Paul Stacy III, one of the owners of LSI, about the replacements. And of course, we've been real hot and dry here lately, and I understand. I'm not surprised when he said, he wrote back, says, I would say within 30 days would be a good time. The weather should be cooled down by then. Did they ever decide to remulch and weed the landscape beds? And we said that the city has not decided. And that's all we left it, because they were expecting to do that themselves, but being paid. Okay, this is what Paul Stacy III said, email. I would say, as far as asking when the replacements will be done, I would say within 30 days would be a good time, 30 days from today. The weather should be cooled down by then, and did they ever decide to remulch and weed the landscape beds?
Well, he's asking if the city has decided.
And I just said, no, they have not decided yet. And that's all I left it at.
Okay.
So he has an update. My contact person is out with LSI now for a couple of more months. So I am now communicating with Paul Stacy III. So that puts us in, and we sent a message back saying, well, that means the 1st of November. So the week of November 3rd. So hopefully by the next tree commission meeting, I can have a positive update that these are being replaced that week.
And what is it exactly that's being replaced? What's an assortment of dead plants, or? The question was, what exactly is on the replacement list? Is it
Yeah, I have a list. I think I may have passed it around last meeting.
okay, and I'm familiar with that list. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
that
that's
there's anything different.
that's the replacement list. Now, unless I do another walkthrough, and as I requested and per the minutes, I requested that if I do another walkthrough, I would like for a representative from LSI to be there, of course, and another representative from City Hall. No.
So when the city
That would be great.
contacted the city manager to,
No. So, sure, some representative, maybe the city manager.
Now, the mulch part, The mulch part, is that something that the city has to request? They're offering to do it free?
Yeah, the city had already gotten an estimate from LSI, this is back in the summer, of weeding, removing weeds and remulching the beds. And it was, I can't remember the exact figure, it's over $10,000.
So that's something they would need us to fund additionally.
Discussion that the mulch was full of weed
It was-
seeds.
I believe it was tainted with weed seeds when it was brought in, and so my fear is that they would bring in another cheap hardwood mulch that would be also infected and contaminated.
So our position is that LSI
At no charge?
the arborist is telling us.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I don't think that they'll do that at no charge.
Last month,
Correct.
fault it is that it's such a mess, and our arborist is saying that the mulch was tainted. I did receive information that Sean Bible was going to call the city manager on see what the state needed to do to get the project finished. Now, whether that's happened or not, I don't know. That came from a friend of mine who's retired from, but he called about LSI and about what was happening. Sean Bible was going to call the city manager.
That would be great. I think that's the only, if TDOT could come in and say, okay, there's obviously something wrong here. You don't get weeds that fast, that aggressively with mulch. The mulch is supposed to prevent weed seeds from germinating. And the fact that they came in, and I showed the photos last month at the meeting, and is how it happened within just a couple of months. From the time they put the mulch down till June, they put mulch down in the winter, and then in June, we had that thick of weeds. It was germinating in the mulch, the weed seeds.
Would it be easier if
Perhaps.
I'll see what I can get done on that. Not promising anything.
Yeah.
And I do recall the conversation and the concerns about, contaminated or tainted mulch, and the idea that the city might need to kind of identify those concerns and send it along to, I guess, start that discussion of whether it's something they would warranty or replace as work that wasn't done properly in the first place. And so we had that discussion. I'm from a process standpoint, when we have something like that occur, what's the process coming out of a discussion where we in the tree board decide, hey, this is official request guidance to the city? How? Well, I guess in this particular case, it's that paragraph or two, however long that is, to adequately describe what's not satisfactory or what the concerns were. And I'm not qualified to pin that. I don't know if you would be, so I don't know if that's something that Mike would have two paragraphs that we might pull from something he's already provided, or he would say, here's the technical, knowledgeable, official reason why we feel this is unsatisfactory.
Would be in the minutes.
The motion from last month was to find it so I can read it.
Old business,
Letter to LSI stating our issues with the contaminated mulch and recommend a solution to correct by removing weed-seed-free mulch. Yes, where the disconnect was who was going to have the city.
I did talk to the city manager about that very same thing, so when I go back, let's start there. When I go back to him first. I will also follow up and see if I can get
And her discussion with Mike, TDOT representative, what's the objective in that? What are we hoping would occur in that conversation?
according to the information that I received,
Close it.
to close it,
Okay.
get it fixed and close it. So I'm assuming that she's gonna have more clout to go at LSI and say, "You gotta fix it."
that is correct, yeah.
So if we can get that done, then I think she was kind of shocked at, the impression I got was that she,
It's a she, but there's a guy that works for her that is now doing the field work.
See if that's better.
I have no voice. Okay, so, but yes.
Sean has got a new guy, and I serve on a nonprofit board with him, in fact, with the state, and he's doing the field work. So, and I'm sorry, I do not have his name with me, but he would probably be the one that I would meet out there, not Sean. Sean headed up the Adopt a Highway beautification part of TDOT. That's where that's her position.
I will follow up with my contact and see if he can get it back in touch with, and see what's happened to that follow-through.
I've known Sean for years. Really good to work out things with. But, you know, this is, just to refresh everybody's memory, we are the client, LSI is the contractor, and it could very well be, and TDOT's stance is that, well, this is a problem between contractor and client. And I'm saying that because as I put this information out to other people, that's what they're coming back and saying.
I will see what I can do. Because it needs to be, so we had the final walkthrough yet?
No.
Okay. So we have a year after the final walkthrough,
Yes.
correct?
I was going to wait, quite honestly, I wanted to wait till the replacements got finished, and then we can go through.
Okey dokey.
Any other discussion on that topic? Next topic on old business, 5.2, Tree City Update, Arbor Day Proclamation. Review other Tennessee city proclamations and agree on a framework construction of the proclamation for the city of Fairview. This would be the recommended proclamation that we would recommend forward. And what I did is I pulled 4 different proclamations, one's for the state of Tennessee, but 3 other cities in Tennessee, and with the idea of giving us all an example of kind of the language that's used, some of the merits and benefits of being a tree city. We can look at what people have described in those, and maybe select some of the best parts and pieces that would go into what we would put together. And if it's something that we can look at now and maybe select a few paragraphs from here and there, I can note those, and then I can assemble a central document that we would use, maybe taking the best pieces of all that we could review at the next meeting and then send forward with the request. And I guess the first piece is if you've got particular paragraphs that you find interesting. I know earlier I was talking with Mike and he mentioned one of the paragraphs he saw that he liked. We can just cherry pick those out. I think it might also be nice, and I'm not necessarily a creative writer, but so if we could reflect the park, Bowie Park, it's one of the things that makes our city different. I mean, we know there was a lot of trees planted going forward there. Somehow add a couple of sentences or something that talks a little bit about the history of that park and why that is close to the city.
And then also maybe mentioning, that we do have an official tree that we are suggesting, even our new commercial development, to plant more red buds or different varieties of red buds so that we would have the official tree throughout, including on private commercial property. And I noticed in the city of Oak Ridge, their proclamation, they suggested a program that includes the planting of an official tree on Arbor Day of each year. So that official tree can be something different the way the official tree would probably be here, of course, at City Hall or a park. Either or, yeah. City property.
Yeah, I like that paragraph as well. And then the paragraph, Arbor Day, Earth Day is a unique celebration focusing not on the past but the future. And by planting this small tree, we affirm our faith in the future. I think that's a good one to include. Nolensville, their paragraph starts out talking about 1872, Sterling Morton proposed the Nebraska Board of Agriculture and a special day be set aside at the national level, I assume, for planting trees. And that's also reflected in one other one, so I think maybe just as a history piece, that's a good one to include. And then there's a list as well on the Nolensville. It's a little bulleted list that talks about, that I think is kind of cool. Whereas trees save stormwater retention cost, clean and cool the air, save energy, attract people and industry, appeal to shoppers, increase home values, increase pavement life, provide health benefits, mitigate noise. That kind of list there, I think, is helpful too for people to maybe appreciate all those attributes when you think about it.
Several of these proclamations from the different cities talked about the future, future generations from Nolensville, the
State of Tennessee does as well.
Jane, did we have something that we wrote up years ago for Arbor Day, a proclamation? Well, how did when we first planted that memorial tree, red bud out front years ago, did we have something like this?
But we didn't do it for Arbor Day, did we? I don't think we did.
I thought so. That tree, I can't remember the family, but they were here, and it was an Arbor Day, part of the Arbor Day. I know there was two celebrations of Arbor Day. One was, I've got had some oaks, some pin oaks and some other tree that we were giving out bare root for everybody that showed up here at City Hall. Then on another Arbor Day, we planted that tree. So we did,
I can look in the minutes.
And we
but
did
I don't
that
think we had a
without-
proclamation.
yeah,
I think you said some, you,
we said some things.
Wasn't that done in 2007? Or did we plan it in 2008 after the 2000?
It was,
We planned it in April of 2008, I bet,
when was the tornado?
February of 2008.
I thought the year we gave out the free trees was the year of the tornado. That was one of the big things, is that people lost a lot of trees on their land and plant these trees back.
I believe that was in February of 2008, was when that hit.
So,
I guess we could look at the plaque.
good.
it's probably.
I have a flashlight in my purse.
So my intent here, I guess my idea is, from some of what we've talked about here, I've highlighted these areas in these different proclamations, and I will take a stab, an effort at assembling one for Fairview reflecting these pieces plus our local tree, redbud, and then bring that draft, circulate the draft, bring it in, we'll discuss it, mark it up for our final piece.
Yeah,
and
good
then,
idea.
Do you want to put something in there about the buoys, that them paying the kids a penny a pine to plant trees?
If there's a, I think that would be very cool, as long as we have something, as long as it's accurate. As long as somebody says, why did you say that? Well, how do you know that? That we have something somewhere that says, see, here's this write-up in the piece. Then I think it's a great opportunity to include it, for something like
Have
that.
Who's going to write this up?
Scott,
I will,
there's the,
I'll be glad to type it up if you get started, I will.
Or if you give it to me, I'll be happy to take it back and include it when I'm doing
okay.
So I've got a question here, Scott. On this one, it's the proclamation by the governor, state of Tennessee. And in here, he says, what they say,
Talks about Memphis.
whereas the state wishes to recognize Memphis for hosting the State Arbor Day celebration. Thank you to all the tree boards, commissions, committees for their efforts to improve our cities and towns that make Tennessee a great place to live. So are we saying that it's possible to get a proclamation like this from the office of the governor, about Arbor Day, and it will say Fairview in it?
I would think so.
That says the state Arbor Day, which is in March.
That's the big thing, is that, and we've decided that we're going to recognize the national date, correct?
But also 1 year
think that was a
celebrate the
question.
state one too.
That was a question we raised at the last meeting, according to minutes, whether or
So-
not, if we want to observe the state and/or the national.
So March is the state, April is the national.
Correct.
April 23rd or 22nd or something.
the last Friday in April or the first Friday in March.
From a planting perspective, is there that much difference? Okay.
I would, myself, I would rather plant in March, things are still dormant.
Maybe we could celebrate the state by planting tulip poplars. And then
Also,
celebrate
it's
the
the state
national
tree.
by planting redbuds.
Suggesting doing both?
Maybe not as-
Recognizing both?
uh,
I mean, to have a proclamation from the governor and actually have it suitable for framing somewhere that says, recognize Fairview for hosting a State Arbor Day celebration.
Some reason
Good
why,
marketing.
is there some reason why we couldn't do both? I mean, why couldn't we?
It's the logistics. I mean, if we're gonna, it's according to what, we could do both and put a little bit more emphasis maybe on the national. if I'm getting these trees together, these free trees, okay? I don't know if I can get free trees unless I get enough that I can myself split them up. But it is a celebration. So are you saying we're gonna have a celebration on both days or just recognize?
Why couldn't we recognize the state and use tree funds to buy a tulip poplar, plant it?
Offer for every state Arbor Day in March.
And then in April, do something a little bit bigger for the National Day.
Might not be worth looking at. Is there anything going on in the city of Fairview in either one of those months that would make the other month more attractive to the city for logistics planning?
Well, you know, when we do get recognized with all the red buds and this big red bud festival, that's gonna be end of April. Not much going on 1st of March. So,
the big
so
thing
if you
for
like,
the-
if you planted a tulip poplar first week in March, it's a dormant tree, you don't see anything on it. Plant a red bud tulip poplar or any other tree at end of April, and you see a tree blooming in some cases. And so my question is, with Memphis, I don't know if you know this, but do they also recognize a national? Both.
And that I don't know, yeah.
Is there a conflict or something? But I don't see why we can't do it this way, but be a little bit more be subtle on the state march and go crazy on the. Because like I said, if it keeps rolling and we can continue to put the red buds all around, this building will be surrounded by a lot of color. And it being the official city tree.
What other types of activities we want to include in
Something that involves families, the kids. The whole thing about the future thing is. Planting a tree is not all that exciting to some people. Bring in something fun same day of the tree, of planting a tree, giving out the trees. And just giving out a tree to a kid is not.
They have trees back then?
They were petrified.
Oh,
But I think that's what, you know, if it's really kind of where we want to go with this. And your question about, Christie, about the, you know, what else is going on that April, there is a nursery right down the road here. Biggest 2 days of the year on that, about that same time.
and it rains those 2 days every year too.
2010 flood happened that weekend.
Exactly.
So that,
Saying that the last
so just
Friday in April is not a
from
good
a
time to do it.
from a personal view, that's hard for me to do things around.
But if we do, maybe we could, you know, start talking about doing the Red Bud Festival and have it kind of connected to that, and it be something, I don't know, I have visions of family picnics and,
I just think, I just see
Face
it,
painting and balloons and
I see it, I think it's just,
Corn
it
dogs.
takes a group maybe beyond this board, Kathy, that, you know, says, okay, I want plant more red buds out. And, you know, and the design that I had around this building was clusters of all these different colors that would be blooming together, some weeping like we have out here, some dwarf, some different leaf colors and everything, and just, there's 20, I know there's more than 30. I have myself 27 different varieties. Jane's been out there and took photos of those, and you put them all in clusters of 3 or more. They bloom. It's nuts. I mean, it's exciting. It's jelly beans in the air is what it is. But so I feel like we can keep going that way. If nothing else, then you start getting a community that's maybe not, they, say, okay, we got trees, we're good. If they see trees truly as, the aesthetic value, then you can talk to them about the clean air, stormwater retention, filtration, habitat, noise reduction. They don't, and I'm saying this very generally, they don't really care about that. But you get eye candy. I mean, I base my business on that foremost, eye candy. Then we could talk about ethical reasons to plant trees. The eye candy part is to say, okay, before we changed it to the red bud official tree, it was the red maple. What can you do with a red maple? You can plant 27 different varieties, and there's that many different varieties of red maple. And in the fall, you'll probably see a lot of the same, red. But you plant red buds, and back here in the back corner of this lot, there's white blooming red buds right next to red blooming red buds. Right out here along this drive, there are weeping red buds that have a dark red leaf color. So you can, within eye shot down at the Hardee's, right outside this front door, there are gold leaf red buds called Rising Suns. So we start to get all these red bud thing going on around here, and it expands out. And if the commercial guys, and every time that I see a commercial development come in, and they put a tree in there that's maybe not on the list or could be something else, or maybe culturally it could maybe be changed, needs to be something more durable, which, hey, the official city tree is a red bud. That's why Hardee's, but they put 2 different varieties of red buds there because the landscape architect from Arkansas with Hardee's, oh, that's official city tree. Well, we're part of this community now. Let's put the official city tree in our landscape. So if you just look at it, this is ground zero, and it goes out to even the commercial. So Fairview Boulevard, for every new, the medical center down here they're gonna have red buds. Walmart has red buds. The Tractor Supply has red buds. Forest Fancy red buds. So we're all getting the red bud thing going. So it is snowballing. But we need to do something to really put it in their face in the community. And I believe, because I've served on a board with a Botanic Gardens, is that they always would say, if you can get the kids, you got the families.
I was going to say the children are the way we need
Get the
to.
children in and make it fun, and don't make it work for them. If it's work, if I'm a kid, I'm coming here, I'm gonna work? No. You want me to pot up a tree? No. You gotta do something else.
Plant labor, projects, 400 trees. Habitat, we are going to use them to plant up Brandenburg here in town, our streets in the Overlook subdivision, and hopefully get some plantings going in the Willow Crest subdivision that's under construction right now. But even if we plant the tar out of trees, they still want to plant 400 trees. It might be a service opportunity where if we can supply the trees, they'd be willing to help come in and do some of the planting for us that would still enable, get people involved. But, so, might be an option.
One of the things that I have to contend with in my own business is that the speculation of what something that when you plant that is 6 feet tall, that will be 20 feet tall in 10 years. It's always that it's the hardest sell. Well, I want that now. And you know, it's a really is hard thing. So that's why I kept thinking the visual is get people to see, because we got some years now on this back corner. They start blooming, it's a show. So I'm not sure how, I just say I'm not good at that part, the marketing part. I just know that the color will be intense. And then because of these different varieties have different leaf colors as well, it's not just a spring, end of April gig, it's a summer, goes through the summer. That part I know, I'm a tree guy, that's it. How to bring in the community and get them excited about, not just about trees, Arbor Day, but also, you know, there's a tree commission, official tree commission in this city. And you could, sure, you can have that list. I love that list that Nolensville has. It's very, those bullets are very, save stormwater retention costs. Wow, now you're talking money. So, but I feel like you have to have the color out there. Cheekwood is now getting known for their tulips. They plant 500,000 tulips. 500,000 tulips. And they spend a lot of money, but they get people in the gate, and all of a sudden, revenues go up. And the families are coming in. They also bring in kid things, you know. They did the Garden Railroad Society came in. They had treehouse. They had bugs. They, you know, all things that were fun, you know. So I think there's a way to do it. I think we can do it without spending much money. And I think that, you know, when it comes to that, there's money in a tree bank that we can maybe use.
One of the things I can do is I am certain there are, online I'll be able to find other cities, what they've done on their celebrations, you know, and there's gonna be activity lists, things that they did. And so similar to what we've got here, maybe bring 3 or 4 of those from different cities that had this activity, and then we can look through those and say, that's a good one, this is a good one. Maybe select some activities directly from their list, but also stimulate our own thoughts down that line.
Everybody here, all of them, no, okay. So Bristol is recognizing the national, and then the 3 others are recognizing the state. Oak Ridge in March 3rd, 8 on this one. So 3 out of the 4 that you brought to the table are recognizing the state. What my question is do they also recognize the national? You know, and not that I'm just the logistics of, and if my question would be, and maybe this is something Scott's talking about, is that if they do they put more emphasis on one or the other, or do they just recognize it by plant one tree out and not having a big celebration? Or was there a reason why they recognize only the state and not the national? Was there a logistical issue with that as well? But it is, you know, a question about when the best time to be planting that tree. Sure, first week in March is a great time to be planting that tree. Is it a good time to look at that tree and say, wow, that's the most beautiful thing I've seen in my life? No. So the marketing value would be in end of April.
And the state one that does talk about Memphis on here, I noticed in there, they are wishing to recognize Memphis for hosting the State Arbor Day celebration. So this may be a special document rather than just recognizing a city because they recognize it, so.
So they go around the state and have big state Arbor Day celebrations in different communities.
What it sounds like, maybe.
Wow.
Maybe. That's just what I'm reading out of that language.
Wouldn't that be cool to have the
So what I'm going to take back for my homework will be piecing the paragraphs together that we've assembled. Try to get some more of the history, relevant history tidbits that might be appropriate to add in there related to Bowie Park. I will research the activity list for a few of the other cities that may have had celebrations, to kind of see what they brought in there, if there were things they scheduled that would attract kids or other activities for families. And then in our next meeting, we can review the compiled proclamation document as well as the activity selections and see if we want to try to start a framework for activities.
I think that probably we would need to also do this. We will have to go through the BOC to get proper permitting to have some sort of an event. Worry about what the activities will be at the event.
But we didn't have to do that on those few times that we did
Correct, because there wasn't a
big event.
big event. That was just parking in the city hall parking lot and giving out trees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the output of this would go to the BOC for consideration. It just makes it more official, it makes it more compelling too if what we turn into the BOC has some thought behind it. It's a quality document, so. Back to Section 5, Old Business 5.3. This is an update item. Funding for design, planning, and landscape architecture design encompassing the full park system. This was a leftover from last time. I left it just to see if there were any other discussion points.
It's going to be discussed at Thursday's workshop.
And Debbie, I actually was on the phone with Andrew Krager today. Spoke with him since he left. He is a good landscape architect. I'm saying, he's good. I'm actually hiring him for some projects myself, but he did have designs for the parks. We talked on the last meeting that we get several designers.
I think all that's going to be discussed at the workshop.
So just don't even.
Yeah.
Don't even.
Don't need it.
You don't need names, firms, or anything before the workshop?
Why don't you email those to me,
Okay.
just in case?
Oh, you know who will? Terry.
Old Business, Section 5.4, update item, craft a list of suggestions for the Planning and Codes Review Project related to approved vegetation care throughout the life of a business. The notes in the minutes. Suggested that, I believe that we would, we would bring forward, do some research to bring forward ideas on that. I have not done any research on that. Says commission members are going to research other cities' design review codes for language and enforcement and bring them to this meeting, but I did not do that. I have not had any, is that the understanding of everybody is kind of the next step here?
Talk to Will and see
I haven't seen a copy of the design review manual. No, I do know that this is currently what lives on the website for the design for landscaping and architect.
what all that's being worked on, so.
One of the things that the city manager spoke about when I met here at City Hall last month a couple of people, is that making a positive initiative for developers to replace the trees. Not sure about all the details, but, you know, instead of the negative fines, Scott has a idea to give incentives to keep those trees alive, and that if they have to replace, the tree dies and they have to replace it, it's not to do it through a fine, but to do it by, here's a break, here's maybe the tree bank money pays for those trees. That's what was brought up.
I did do a little bit of research, and the landscaping and screening section of Appendix A zoning for Murfreesboro is very comprehensive. It's, I believe, 37 pages long, so extremely comprehensive. But in it, well, I think that might be much, and some of this could be found in our other, because a lot of it was definitions, but it does talk about what the submittal is, what the requirements are. It has, like, regarding special incentives for using the city tree, or no one species shall comprise more than 60% of the total number of trees. And it also has the maintenance requirements, which I thought were good, and they read that after the installation bond described in subsection T is satisfied, the owner shall submit a maintenance bond to the city, ... requiring landscaping for a period of 3 years. During the 3-year maintenance bond period, the owner shall keep the required landscaping in order. All required landscaping at the end of 3 years, maintenance bond shall be returned. Perpetual, the owner shall be responsible for the perpetual maintenance of all landscaping materials required by City Code A. Should a plant or portion of the required landscaping die, the owner shall be responsible for replacing said plantings with a plant or plants that have similar characteristics and form. So it does talk about that it's in perpetuity, because I think that was one of the things that we had talked, is like, what do we do? And
But how do they enforce that?
it's actually part of their codes department. They have enforcement by the Urban Environmental Director.
So if it's part of the codes,
They actually have somebody
so
who does nothing but
it's through a fine if they do not.
Actually, it doesn't say what happens if they don't replace, or at least not in that particular paragraph. The other thing I noticed is they do a credit towards landscaping for preserved trees.
Yeah, kind of,
So-
which is
So
what
if you preserve the 200-year-old oak, then you get to have credit on what you have to put in.
the white oak that was up there.
So if you preserve that when you're planting, then you get credit and don't have to put as much in.
But that's part of their
But we don't have that.
document. We don't have that. I'm
No,
just
we
saying
don't have
this
that.
is-
But what would it take for us to get that?
I think we have to give it to,
Put it in the design review.
That's Will. Is Will doing that?
Will's
That's good.
It's very comprehensive.
is there a motion that we give that to the city manager?
As far as give them that's Murfreesboro?
Yes, this is Murfreesboro.
Give them that whole section, that code packet as a reference, or as a suggestion to adopt it?
Section to include similar language and coding and what would suit codes.
Full pieces in part, I mean, tell me.
what she said.
I think we're gonna have to, I do too. Can you,
Yes.
Yeah, so that'll be our action item tonight. We'll be email so we can all dig through it and,
quickly dig through it?
Yep.
Like, probably by the end of next week, dig through it.
Does that have a date?
yes.
Did that, when they,
Very new.
really?
It is a very
I just
new.
happened to notice that, so.
They were not messing around.
They report, everybody reports back to you.
And include that, those thoughts to that.
Comments.
Yes.
I can get this out to everybody tomorrow.
If you would,
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. That'd be helpful.
you know, compile
I'll get Terry.
I'll just send mine to you.
into, if you handwrite your notes on it, scan it.
Write
it
it,
too
is your
easy.
writing legible?
Well, maybe,
I see.
not really.
I was gonna say, can't you letter? Instead of write?
No, it takes too long.
Oh, okay.
Scribbling is terrible.
And then the design review manual process that's occurring now, there's a section or a subsection that will touch on these topics, right? It may not address it to the granularity or with the ideas that are in this document we're talking about, but we currently, really, we don't know what that looks like yet. We don't know what their product, because they're not finished yet. Is that accurate?
Did they start with
I cannot speak knowledgeably of that.
Ad apparently isn't even
That's my concern, is they just totally disregarded what we had. So we need to quickly get something put together.
Oh, yeah. What, I
Get a lot of work.
apologize and,
I know.
and infer to you because I should have
I
never
will
said that.
send you a copy.
Spent a lot of time on that.
Website, so I'm not sure if it has been taken down or if it never truly made it.
I think at one point in time it was on the website, and I think for some reason it's been taken down.
So the
And I looked
approved
yesterday.
tree and shrub list that we worked on and put it in, they can pull that up.
Yes, this is the entire
So that's,
packet of what I
but that's
pulled.
part of the design.
Trees and shrub
review.
and
I
the
know.
density worksheet, these are the only things that are
confused.
out there.
So, and then that tree density worksheet, is that part of, so if someone got one onto our website,
You can find this.
that it has that, so
It
it's,
is not in the review manual itself, like everybody else's were.
right,
But it is available.
I think these are all part of our ordinance,
right.
Right,
tree ordinance.
right.
The design review manual
Yeah.
was a little bit separate.
Okay.
Is that there were, one of them, and I don't remember if it was Murfreesboro or another one, had actually a specific list of things that were not ever to be planted for any reason. I'm assuming that we have one also somewhere in the
We didn't, we
ordinances,
put the
or-
TNIPSI, and it's IPSI now, it's IPC, Tennessee Invasive Plant Council.
Okay.
And we say, if it's on any of their lists from severe, the severity of it,
Regardless.
then you cannot plant them.
Okay.
Yeah, but we obviously can't, we're having a hard time enforcing it since it's been. My favorite landscape.
Whatever it was just a real quick section, and it mentioned like the 5 that even I know about, so it was like the Japanese honeysuckle and, or
Right,
whatever that is, and
right.
kudzu.
But if you, well, and, you know, that's the, of course, that's right at the very top, but there are some other, like the Pyrus caloriana, which is the Bradford pear,
Oh, right.
is on that IPSI list. And so we're saying if it's on the IPSI list, it cannot be planted in commercial.
Probably just making sure that we reference that somewhere very clearly.
Yeah, well,
It
that's,
was, and it was in ours.
yeah, yeah. That's what also the approved list, so, you know, we covered a lot, we would say, using redbud as an example, we would say redbud and all cultivars. So that made hundreds and hundreds of trees, so.
So we'll get the Brentwood,
Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro document.
Yes.
Read through that, comment on it, send those comments to Jane, and she will kind of make a unified document reflecting those ideas over the next week or two, right? You thought there was an urgency there
I would suggest by the end of,
by the end of next week.
the comments back to you by Monday.
Okay. Any other discussion on that item? Section 6, new business. This is one that I added in there. It's, I'm fairly new at this, so this is to help me grab an understanding. I want to make sure I'm doing things correctly to the best of my ability. And so this is really just around document preparation and housekeeping. Discuss and adopt standard procedures for pre-meeting and post-meeting documentation preparation and distribution related to the tree commission meetings. Pre-meeting, what's to be prepared, minutes and agenda, who prepares, who approves, who distributes, distribution timelines, post-meeting, sending out final approved documents, meeting agendas, or other to the city for filing. So this, scenarios I'm thinking, before a meeting, we're going to prepare an agenda, and that agenda gets sent out for other people to comment on. They can add something to it. I can update it before it would come in here. That agenda would get sent to the city so that they could post it on their city website so that people could look at that and say, oh, there's something on there, I want to come into the meeting. So those are the pre-meeting components or the minutes. Then the post-meeting components would be the final approved minutes that would go, I'm assuming, to the city so they could be filed. Maybe the final agenda document, or I guess that's the agenda that gets posted, or the final agenda document that would get reflected, you know, if we modified that agenda going into a meeting. And then even things like we've got this resolution, this proclamation we've talked about, right? There's a document we're talking about, working on and preparing it, and attachments and those things. The mechanism and person or role within the city, who those types of things would go to. And some of those, it might be, it depends on the document, but I mean, the bulk of the stuff we do is going to be the minutes preparation, the agenda preparation, and then after the meeting, the approved minutes, and I guess the final approved agenda that resulted from the meeting. And so we've got a 30-day cycle for our meetings. So for example, on the minutes, we've got our meeting today. What would be and if we had this, it's not meant to be a hard rule that we absolutely can't break. It's just a guideline so that any of us at any time can look at it and say, hey, are we on schedule where we need to be? And for the minutes coming out of a meeting, I don't know that there's super time critical, that could be something that would be distributed a week before the coming meeting, 10 days before the next meeting. Or maybe there's been a way we've done it in the past that I just haven't.
To get posted, Brandy has to have it a week,
This is the agenda.
the agenda, and if there's,
And in the past, Jane prepared the agenda. Jane did the minutes and had those. The secretary did all the pre and post.
Okay,
It was kind of new.
That
and
was
then
good,
just kind
yeah.
of, agenda.
okay.
To
that
to
makes
everybody on
sense.
the board, right,
Right,
is what you do,
everybody,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's-
So I could, for example, 10 days before the scheduled meeting, send out a note to request ideas, things that people want to include on the agenda
Typically,
that we're collecting it, and then,
But they will communicate. Yeah.
got the reminder, and I responded like everyone else did if I had anything.
okay.
They just responded
So,
back to
so, and would that be about 10 days before you would? All right, 2 weeks. We'll just
Yeah,
round
give
it.
people-
Yep, time to think.
5 to 7 days to
So,
get the agenda.
so 2 weeks before the next meeting,
Like the last one. Yeah.
a reminder would go out from the secretary that we're preparing for the meeting. Does anybody have any agenda items? Those responses come in. And then who would prepare that agenda from that?
Secretary.
The secretary prepares that list. And then who sends that list to the city, to Brandy, the secretary? And would the minutes, would any minutes go out with that?
Recorder, right? I'm
She's
not
the
trying to be-
recorder.
I'm not trying to be-
Yeah.
I would usually just send the final, because I usually did all the typing at the same time. Send the final minutes to her from the previous meeting, but no draft minutes.
The final minutes, but they're not yet approved, right? Because they're going to be, they're scheduled to be approved in the
No,
coming,
these would be the ones that were approved.
the last meeting.
Previous.
Got it. All right, all right,
Okay.
all right.
So September's minutes would be sent to her.
Correct, once. On the city's website.
And if there were changes on the minutes,
There were changes made during the meeting, that would be made prior to sending the final copy.
So, for example, we approved the minute pack today, and so I'm thinking from what we've talked about, 2 weeks before the next, I'm sorry, 1 week before the next meeting, we will have the agenda document prepared, and we can include the draft agenda and this final approved copy today. Both of those can go to Brandy to say, hey, here's the coming agenda, here's the approved minute pack from last week. And that would happen 1 week before whatever the next recurring meeting is. Got it.
Make more sense to get them minutes sooner. To get them typed up. But just so people can
So the pre-approved minutes, you're talking,
read them, see if they didn't
the draft minutes.
Draft minutes.
see if they didn't final ones, sending those out so that it, say, here's the minutes from the previous meeting, finalized. Please review and also provide me with any agenda items for the next meeting. Because sometimes people reading the minutes, it may trigger them to think, oh, yes, we need to put something else on the agenda. It just may,
Resend the approved minutes.
instead of waiting till the week before the next meeting, you would send them with a request for agenda items.
I was actually thinking, this is my framework, since we're asking people to work on things in these minutes, would be that typically 1 week from today, so by next Tuesday, I would have the draft of what we've talked about today to send out to everybody for action items, comments, critiques, concerns, details, as part of what? As a, hey, don't forget, we all need to work on this.
Also a chance for us to review those minutes before the next meeting, because we're going to have a vote to approve them. So we get to dig in and say, oh, I want to talk about paragraph 2, this isn't quite right.
Right, it gives you more chance
You're
to give me some feedback,
talking
especially
about
while
the
I'm
draft
doing this
minutes
at the
from
beginning,
this
from today's meeting.
And so,
from-
but you're also talking about the final output product as just a reminder, as a
Yes.
courtesy to include as well.
Of the draft minutes and the approved minutes.
Yes.
And then, but within an early enough time frame to digest that. And from the minute standpoint, I would say we don't have to wait till 2 weeks before the next meeting to send those out. So if you've got something that works well for you, just to get them out. My worry is more about deadlines that we get harmed if we miss. So coming in early isn't a problem. Okay, that makes sense to me. And so within those different tasks, do I have a role in that at all, other than just to read them? All right.
If you would like to continue to have a lot of input in the agenda, that would be great.
And
Because you see different things that are coming along.
yeah, and I certainly don't mind putting that together. Maybe that, or just sending that to you. I just wanted to make sure that I'm getting it in a timely manner to all of the people that have an interest in it and their downstream things they might have to do with them. So, so this makes sense. I think if we get that captured in the minutes, these date frames, then when we approve it, that'll give us our second read to make sure that, second glance at it to make sure that makes sense in everybody and we're all on the same target.
One other item that we, toward the have a BOC recommendation, that we try to get that to them as quickly as possible following the meeting, so they have it for their Thursday.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thursday, the third Thursday.
That's right, if we decide in there
email
that,
to the BOC members.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And and Brandy also would be aware of that BOC agenda coming up as well, and. Yeah, and so kind of what I envision is just this little block of text that has the 3 or 4 different types of documents we handle, and then something that has those dates that we're striving for, and then maybe that intended audience. So it might be a Brandy or city manager, it might be all of us in another group, it might be everybody in that last group. New business, item 7. Staff review meeting update. Mike?
Yeah, no reason for me to discuss whenever there's anything that has something to do with, that's not about trees, like annexing or anything. And a lot of these staff review meetings, it's a discussion on annexing going on, trees. But out of 4 subdivisions that on the agenda for the staff reviewing of September 19th, Whispering Hills subdivision, Joe Shep Delane development. On the design, there showed a hill strip, which is the spot, the grassy area between sidewalk and curb. If I don't see street trees on that design, then I will, of course, question where you're going to put street trees. And if you're putting street trees, there is something on the website and codes of what those street trees have to be. And that if there's landscaping at the entrance to these subdivisions, that was a question also to Mr. Shep Delane, is that those entrances also has to follow the guidelines, which is basically what trees or shrubs you can and cannot plant So with that, Whispering Hills subdivision, Roachdale Estates on Cumberland Drive, same deal with that. I can't tell you who the developer was. They're going to have detention ponds when they're doing detention ponds and they're planting around detention ponds, they must also adhere to the codes on the street.
Where is Roachdale?
Cumberland Drive, off of Cumberland Drive, you know, Cumberland Drive is just exploding. And so it's on the left side, on the opposite side of where the big monster, I can't remember the name of that development that's going in on Cumberland, off of Cumberland. So there's a couple of small developments coming in on the left side of Cumberland Drive, and
It's got like 12 houses or something.
yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, lots. And one lot devoted to a detention, big detention. So really, what the staff review, it's really interesting, and I would invite anybody to come in and sit in on it just to see it, and hear what's going on. But this is where we get to make the changes with the developers and say, okay, here's, just so you'll know, because I can't tell you since I've been doing this staff review, how many developers have come in and didn't know there was something on the website about the trees.
My concern, again, and maybe this has been answered, but why is that stuff not coming to the tree board, the tree commission?
That's, you're gonna have to go above me to get that answer. You know, it's a preliminary rough draft, and that's why and then I keep getting these answers from city planner and engineers and Micah, codes, with codes, that, okay, you can't say anything about this really, you can make the suggestions, okay, because there will be a final design that's been edited, but I don't get to see that till the end. So it's not, so, yeah, I agree with you, Debbie. All of these should come. The fact that tonight we sat here and there's not a design sitting on this table like there used to be, I am concerned about it. But we make the change, we tell them this is what they have to do. I don't see that plan again.
We're told in planning commission never saw it again. It was only ever seen again at the staff review.
But I don't see the final.
We really still don't know the process. We don't have
Well-
a step-by-step process.
So the city manager at one of these meetings, we call them workshop, said to have, he was working on a schematic. We all, you know, said that's great. So Brandon was involved in, I think Micah was at the meeting, friends were there. The idea was, you know, she also, because we were talking about the parks, is that all the different boards, where do they all come in? All the boards. And he was working on a schematic. That would be great, because we should get these designs. But what we should get is not the design that I see during the staff review. We should be seeing a final design.
And I'm going to say this again for the record, we used to.
Value in your reviewing it. A lot of time and money to get some of these thoughts straight.
I believe that this was set aside originally, so that would help the guys coming, the builders coming in, the developers. It was
It
really
makes
to help
sense.
them.
And it makes
you know,
sense.
That before it came up to the BOC, they had plenty of time to get all of these things fixed.
And they
Before the
actually
planning
knew
commission,
Right, even
before,
before the planning commission.
yeah.
And that we actually had guidelines on the website. If they didn't know
Right.
when they came to staff meeting, they left the staff meeting knowing.
But somehow, we have to get that communicated with codes, because that's where it starts there with the codes. City planner, city manager. How do we do that, Debbie?
I don't know. We've tried to do it. We have talked until we're blue in the face, and I don't know how we're gonna do it. I think we just have to keep trying to get that done. I find it very frustrating. I mean, it appears it would be fairly simple to sit down and say, this is where you go first, this is where you go second. Go here first, and you have to make changes. You cannot go to the planning commission until those changes are made.
Well, it makes sense that the tree commission sees these, because you guys don't know about the trees and everything, you know, the plants, the landscaping, all that stuff. We know this, and especially while I'm sitting on this board, so we can say, okay, well, this is good, oh, no, this is not. So you need to make this change before you go to the planning commission. The way it used to work, it was a great, great system, it was working, so we must, and we did it for years.
I understand.
Who do we go to? Now, I sit in on these staff review. I don't sit in the staff review meetings with the city manager. I sit in there with the city planner, Mike, and the codes, Micah, and Will.
Well, I would presume that Will would have the authority to put that in the design review manual. This is the process. You go to the plant, you take your landscape plans to the tree commission. Tree commission signs off on it. Then you go to the planning commission. The planning commission has to check to make sure it's been signed off by the tree commission, fire department, whoever else needs to sign off on
Department,
that.
everybody, yeah.
And everybody has to be signed off. Then the planning commission approves their steps. And then if it has to go to the board, then it goes to the board.
The board has final.
And board has final approval, but everyone, all the processes up until that point should be in place and should be signed off on.
You know, the tree board approved this landscape plan with or without contingency. If it had a change, then it would allow Mike to go back and make the final
Right.
decision based on the change.
And it might be the way things are scheduled. Okay, so this is September 19th that had this, okay? When did the planning commission, we wouldn't have had,
Doesn't matter.
so this Whispering Hills subdivision, has the planning commission gotten this design yet? This plan? Any of Rochelle,
We've seen.
Rochdale
we've seen
Estates, Otter
Rochdale
Creek?
or-
Surely it's not
and
Roachdale.
It's, sure it's
Roach,
not Rockdale.
I swear that's what they said, ROCH, Rochdale Estates, Rochdale, Dutch, it's Rochdale. Pepper Tree Cove on Horn Tavern,
We've
Otter Creek subdivision on Old National Road.
Seen something about Pepper Creek.
Okay, so my point is that, see, the planning commission, and that, what was the date on that?
Last commission meeting.
It was,
The second week of
It was-
September.
let's look at, so that may be, the issue is that,
The 12th.
all right, we're on the first Tuesday. All right, so there's been a lot of things happening, a lot of meetings happening, other boards before this first.
But it should, I mean, historically, codes gave the developers a packet with the plan. You have to go here first, go here second. These are the dates these boards and commissions meet. So as far as I know, the city is not in the business to make developers' calendars work for the developer. The developer's calendar should be working with the city. So I don't know what we're gonna have to do.
All right, so September 19th. So the planning commission met when? September 12th. Okay, so, and then after the 19th, when was your, have you had another planning commission?
No, our next
Oh, well
planning
then-
commission isn't until the 10th.
Oh, so then we can, the timing is good. So we can, so any of these subdivisions here could be on this table tonight.
Yes.
And then by October the 10th,
Right, and by October the 10th.
So there's a
Because we
week.
would have reviewed them and looked at them, and then they could still be on our,
Not their final draft, whatever.
I know.
So,
Perhaps what
has it
has
been
his
seen?
landscape plan.
good system, it was smooth, it worked. It kept a lot of things from falling through the cracks. Discussion is that the city arborist gets with the planning commission and says, okay, well, I've checked this off, I've signed this off, this is good and everything. I have to get those plans before this next week.
Right. That's where a lot of the fallout has been, is that they're talking about it in the staff meeting, and I could be wrong because I'm not a part of the staff meetings, but they're talking about it in the staff meetings. And then when it comes to the tree commission, or to the planning commission, we're asking if not the tree commission has looked at it, but if the city arborist has looked at it.
Is that what you're asking now?
And
Is what
maybe,
you're doing now?
yes, and there it's being talked about that it's been
Looking at it and signing off is two
Or
different
two,
things.
are, true.
Because I don't sign off on any of it at the staff
Right,
review.
but-
It's not finished.
But it's being talked about, it's being asked if you've reviewed it. And if you reviewed it in the staff review, you're right, that is very different, but then it coming to the tree commission and being signed off on. And it could be that
Oh,
where
yeah,
it's being,
Mike's approved it, so
yes,
we're good to
it
go.
could be some of that that's happening. People are just trying to,
This board needs to get these plans.
Agree. I'm working on that, I'm working on that even as we speak.
Oh, I've seen that look. This is where codes, the developer needs that list of signatures on it. Sign it off at tree board, he's got that.
A plan would not come out of codes, and this is the way I remember it happening, a plan would not come out of codes to the BOC on those evenings.
The plan, the developer came to the tree commission first. He had to be here. The developer had to, someone from the development had to be here. So if we had questions, we signed off on it. It went directly to the planning commission. The planning commission took it through all their steps. And if there was any zoning to be done, if there was anything else to be done, it went to the BOC. But tree commission sent plans directly to the planning commission.
That would help the planning commission because
Takes the responsibility off them to clear that level.
it just seems to be smarter, it's cleaner, it's not slowing things down, right? I mean, this process slowing, if it came to the tree commission,
If they, if it was on the agenda and they had a representative here, question. On the tree board agenda.
No, because, there were several times that we didn't have anyone here. And
That
so we
upset a
finally
few-
passed that
It
if you're
upset
not
a few
here,
people in City Hall.
not here, then we're not talking about your
Right.
project.
That put them a month.
That's how it is at the planning commission. If you don't
Have
talk
you,
about your
have you, since you've been on the planning commission, have you denied some plans or anything?
We haven't
that would
denied
put-
anybody, but we did not discuss one because there was no representative. Yes,
But, so if you didn't discuss one because there's no representative,
they had to wait until the next
they had to
month.
wait till, okay,
Yes.
well, then they must be okay with that, or not okay, but it's part of the procedure.
part of the
This is
process.
part of the process. It's part of it. And they have enough time to make those changes.
Design review manual, then it would be right there with all of the other things that they are looking at.
Well.
I'm working on it right now.
It's a fire.
They're getting ready to make millions of dollars. It shouldn't be a inconvenience.
I was just. Could they at least be willing to?
No, but, and Jane, I see what you're saying, but for years, we would have a dozen people sometimes during a pre-commission meeting. And we would make suggestions. Before you took this, before this got sent to the planning commission, make these changes.
Really, only the landscape architect has to appear here.
And many times that happened, because he's the tree guy. He's the landscaping guy. And so and that happened with Tractor Supply. It happened with Bowie Commons. Made some changes. And it seemed to flow right on
What
through.
we did say, so it would not delay, is if they make the changes back by you, you could sign off on it.
Codes department would call me
Right.
and say, can you come by City Hall, which I always was willing to do. Come by City Hall, check this, sign. And I would sign and date it.
Not delay it another month.
It didn't slow down the process at all.
Because we had reviewed it, and these are the things that are incorrect. If you fix those three things, then we sign off on it. Being-
Well, sure need to have that back. There's a lot of things discussed at the staff review. You've got the Dixon Water Authority sitting at the table. You have the police department typically, and talking about the safety of a certain, okay, well, you're gonna have this cul-de-sac gonna be, how wide is it gonna be for, there's a school close by or sidewalks, police department talking about, being able to get in and out, We have Will, the engineer, city engineer, we have Micah with codes. And we have Public Works, Keith with Public Works, and everything's discussed, okay, what's the stormwater issue there? Where's this water going to? And we sit and really look at these things, and I'm looking at, well, what's the tree thing, all about? And with subdivisions, the big thing now, I cannot, if they are putting a tree in each lot, okay, they are the owner of that lot before a homeowner comes in and HOA comes in. They should be following the same, okay? So those trees that go in, throwing in a landscape, the fix-it landscape, right there at every new home, those should follow the same requirements as a commercial. You sure
And
you are?
while you're developing, you're not just Mike Berkeley building a new house, you're developing, so therefore you're a commercial business.
Good discussion on number 7.
So
Staff review meetings.
It's the third.
So as the new person here, to recap what I think I understand, there used to be an approval process that did come to this committee, and it appeared to work. It accomplished what we needed, and then there's been some deviation for some reason that maybe none of us really truly understand all the parts and pieces, but it's not happening now, and that risks things not getting properly vetted and approved.
There was, I think it was because a few years ago, there was a discussion of what this board was for. Was it regulatory or recommendation?
Also, that they actually started looking at had been, we thought, voted on in past, had never made it that far. So,
Not official.
so at that point in time, the process stopped.
And so it sounds like there's 2 or 3 things that we've talked about today on how we can try to move towards repairing that gap, restoring that functionality. One is there's the process flow or schematic that the city manager had talked about preparing. And so I would think that would be a piece of that so that all people with an interest in that topic would understand where they plug in.
Let me say also that schematic was not just for us, that was for developers to see this off of the website.
That's right.
This is what you're supposed to be doing when.
That's right.
And it did include, according to Scott, it did include the tree commission on it, so.
So that document, when it comes out, will be helpful to review and see if it accomplishes the concerns that we've expressed today, if it covers those. Another item, action we talked that we could do something with going forward would be at the Planning Commission itself, if that question could get raised, hey, has this been in front of the tree commission? Just raising the question alone and get that discussion on that group. And then the third item I've heard is I think Debbie's gonna just make some inquiries to try to better understand what our process is now, maybe, from a city perspective, and what steps officially need to occur, who needs to be involved to try to get this process refined and understood and published. Any other discussion on that topic or any other? Item 7. Item 8, update on tree bank funds.
Debbie, the question on the new medical center. They have already put, because they were putting some money in, so they've already done that.
Yes.
Okay, so, but there will still be a landscape. They're just they're putting some plants in on the landscape, but it was not enough to take care of the tree density. So they're doing half and half, right? I mean, they're doing some approved landscape, but they're also putting money in on it. Not yet. It's still early.
Item 9 is citizens' comments.
Yeah, so the observer, does she know, does Nancy know about it? Can she put that in? Oh, I see. That's great. I mean, this is the beginning of it, you know?
Where would those be planted? Where would those be planted? Okay. And then our final item is the adjournment item. I'll just remark that the next tree commission meeting date is November 7th of 2017 at 7 PM at City Hall. And is there a motion to adjourn?